While most of the national media is already writing off the Dolphins before the start of the 2026 season, within the organization, a completely different mentality is forming. Jeff Hafley is saying things that should make all Dolphins fans stop and pay close attention, because this doesn't seem to be the same Miami team we've seen in recent years. There's a new tone, a new level of accountability, and possibly a big gamble that could save the franchise or delay the rebuilding process for years. And believe me, when you hear what Hafley really thinks about Malik Willis, Caden Proctor, and rookie linebacker Jacob Rodriguez, some of you will be very excited, while others may start to get nervous about where this organization is headed. Because one thing is becoming crystal clear: the Dolphins are no longer building a team to get attention. They are building a team for war. But before revealing everything that's happening, be sure to like this post right now if you still believe the Miami Dolphins can surprise the NFL in 2026. And I want all the optimistic Dolphins fans to comment this below right now. The future is turquoise and orange. Let's see how many true believers are still supporting this team, no matter what happens this season. Now let's get straight into it, because Jeff Hafley revealed some fascinating information during his appearance with Richard Sherman, and honestly, Dolphins fans should pay very close attention to every single word. The biggest thing that stood out immediately was Hafley's mentality regarding the 2026 season. A lot of people around the league are already projecting Miami to struggle badly this year. Some sportsbooks even have the Dolphins tied for one of the lowest projected win totals in the NFL. Normally, hearing that would create panic across the fan base. But Hafley didn't sound nervous at all. Instead, he sounded like a coach who fully understands that this season is about laying the foundation for something bigger. And honestly, that may frustrate some fans. Because Hafley openly admitted the focus is not necessarily on immediate playoff success. The focus is culture, effort, discipline, accountability, and creating a team that competes harder than everyone else every single week. That sounds simple, but Dolphins fans know this locker room has lacked consistency for years. One week they looked explosive, the next week completely disconnected. Hafley basically made it clear that if players are not matching the effort and toughness standard he wants, they will be replaced immediately. That's a massive statement. This feels very different from the previous regime. What's interesting is that Hafley seems to be combining two coaching styles Dolphins fans know very well. He has some of the demanding discipline and defensive toughness that Brian Flores brought to the organization. But at the same time, he also wants strong communication and collaboration with players, similar to Mike McDaniel's more relaxed personality. Hafley said he constantly asks players what they see on the field because he wants them involved in the process. That's huge. Players often perform better when they feel heard and trusted. But unlike some previous locker room environments, Hafley also made it clear there will be zero tolerance for laziness or lack of focus. And now we need to talk about the biggest storyline of this entire season, Malik Willis. Because based on everything Hafley said, it honestly feels like the Dolphins are preparing to give Willis a real opportunity to prove he can become the future franchise quarterback of this organization. Hafley spoke extremely highly about him, praising his athleticism, deep ball accuracy, toughness, mobility, competitiveness, and leadership qualities. He even revealed that during previous experiences, he communicated with Malik Willis constantly and knew exactly the type of person and player Miami was getting. That matters. This was not a random free agent gamble. The Dolphins coaching staff clearly believes there is untapped potential here, and if we're being honest, this entire season may revolve around one giant question. Can Malik Willis actually become the long-term answer at quarterback? Because if he succeeds, everything changes. If he struggles badly, Miami could enter the loaded 2027 quarterback draft class aggressively searching for another franchise signal caller. But if Willis flashes star potential, suddenly this rebuild accelerates much faster than people expect. That's why Hafley's confidence in him should grab everyone's attention right now. Then there's Caden Proctor, and Dolphins fans should really listen carefully to what Hafley accidentally revealed here, because this may tell us exactly what Miami's offensive line plans are moving forward. Hafley called Proctor a premium position player, emphasizing his size, youth, and talent level. But here's the interesting part. Proctor is expected to begin at left guard this season. Normally, guard is not considered a premium position in the NFL. Offensive tackle is. So what does that mean? It strongly suggests Miami already views Caden Proctor as a future offensive tackle long-term. The Dolphins may simply be using guard as a temporary way to get him on the field immediately while still developing him into a future bookend tackle alongside Patrick Paul. Austin Jackson's future suddenly becomes a major question mark because he's entering the final year of his contract and injuries have been a constant issue throughout his career. And if Proctor develops quickly, the Dolphins could completely reshape the offensive line by 2027. But maybe the most shocking thing Hafley revealed involved rookie linebacker Jacob Rodriguez. According to Hafley, Miami was stunned Rodriguez was still available when they selected him. The coaching staff clearly believes they landed one of the steals of the draft. But this goes deeper than simply adding linebacker depth. Hafley repeatedly highlighted Rodriguez's leadership, intelligence, instincts, communication skills, and ability to command a defense. And here's where things get really interesting. There's now growing belief that Jacob Rodriguez could immediately become the defensive signal caller as a rookie. That's enormous responsibility for a first-year player. But apparently the Dolphins trust his football IQ enough to potentially hand him the green dot role right away. Considering Jordan Brooks reportedly prefers focusing purely on playing rather than handling communication duties, Rodriguez could instantly become one of the most important defensive players on this roster faster than anyone expected. That says a lot about how highly this organization views him already. And honestly, Dolphins fans should probably prepare for a season full of growing pains, experimentation, and roster development. But at the same time, there's also genuine reason for optimism because for the first time in a while, it feels like Miami finally has a clear long-term vision instead of constantly chasing short-term fixes. What makes this situation even more fascinating is that Jeff Hafley doesn't sound like a coach who's simply trying to survive year one of a rebuild. He sounds like somebody who already has a long-term blueprint in his head. And Dolphins fans are starting to notice that this organization may finally be thinking 3 or 4 years ahead instead of just trying to patch holes every offseason. That alone changes the entire feeling surrounding this franchise right now. Because let's be honest for a second, over the last several years, Miami constantly chased quick fixes. Every offseason felt like the team was 1 or 2 moves away from finally becoming a true Super Bowl contender. Big trades, expensive signings, flashy offensive concepts, all of it created excitement. But eventually the same problems kept showing up. Injuries piled up, the offensive line struggled, leadership questions appeared in the locker room, and when adversity hit late in the season, the Dolphins often looked mentally exhausted. That's why Hafley's comments about culture and effort matter so much more than people realize. He repeatedly emphasized accountability. He repeatedly talked about competition. And maybe the most important thing he said was that if players are not meeting the standard, somebody else will get the opportunity. That sounds simple, but Dolphins fans know there were moments in previous years where certain players almost felt untouchable regardless of performance. Hafley doesn't seem interested in that kind of environment at all. And honestly, that mentality could completely reshape this locker room. One thing that really stood out was how much emphasis the coaching staff is putting on leadership from younger players. Normally rookies enter the NFL slowly, especially linebackers who have to learn complex defensive systems. But the way Hafley talked about Jacob Rodriguez sounded completely different. It sounded like Miami already views him as one of the emotional leaders of the defense before he's even played a regular season snap. That is rare. The Dolphins clearly believe Rodriguez